Hello, this is Dr. Gary McGowan, Dr. Physio and trainer here at Triage Method, and today I'm going to teach you about the difference between a knee dominant and a hip dominant squat. The squat trains multiple different muscle groups. All of you have experienced this. There's some of you who feel nothing but quads, and there's some of you who feel nothing but glutes. And unfortunately, some of us who feel nothing but lower back when we do our squats. Firstly, the muscles that are involved in a squat. We've got the hip joint that's moving, we've got the knee joint that's moving, and we've got the ankle joint that's moving. Of course, there are other joints involved, but they're the three primary joints that create this squatting movement. So when we're talking about hip dominant versus knee dominant, or glute dominant versus quad dominant, we're talking about how much relative motion we have at each of these respective joints. So, for example, if I go like this, right, looks more like a deadlift, looks more like an RDL, but there are some people, when they squat, it doesn't look too dissimilar to that. They'll start their squat, loads of hip movement, not very much knee movement. This is going to be working those glutes, those hamstrings, the lower back, all movement at the hip, very little quad and very little movement at the knee. Very obvious difference here. If I shift those knees forward, more knee and ankle movement, now I'm more upright, there's more movement at the knee, less at the hip. These are the basic differences that we talk about when we're talking about a knee versus hip dominant squat. Paddy's 6'5", okay? It's going to be a very different squat to someone that's, let's say, 4'11", and this then varies further based on proportion. So let's watch Paddy's basic squat first and foremost. So this is a relatively upright squat. If I was looking at this, I would assume that Paddy probably does get a quad stimulus, but it's kind of mixed, okay? He's not really far lean forward. He's not really upright like some of those Chinese weightlifters you'd see where they're super upright. So he's kind of somewhere in the middle. If Paddy was my client, right, and as a case study, Paddy says, Gary, I'm doing this squat, feeling my glutes are growing, feeling my lower back's getting a little bit sore, my adductors are sore, and I want to make it more knee dominant. So we've got our case study, and this is what Paddy's showing me when he squats. He squats down, and what I see is that these hips are shooting back. The bar, as I look at it, it's over the middle of his foot more or less, but the knees aren't traveling forward very much, okay? The knees are restricted. They're behind the front of the foot. This is a very hip dominant squat. What I'm going to get him to do now, first couple of cues, I'm going to say, Paddy, as you squat down towards the bottom, I want you to let these knees move forward a bit more. That's the first change we're going to make. As the knee moves forward, more ankle dorsiflexion, now we've got a greater challenge here on the quads, and you can come back up. That's one of the most basic changes that we can make. And you might be thinking, right, you're telling me to move the knees forward, I'm starting to move them forward, but you know what happens when I move them forward? My heels start to raise up. Okay, I come to the end of my ankle dorsiflexion range of motion, and now you're up at the toes. What can we do about that? There's loads we can do about that. So you'll see I've got these wedges here, okay? These wedges are of different heights. This is a taller wedge, this is a smaller wedge. If I squat on something like this, what it's going to allow for is a false increase in ankle dorsiflexion motion. What that means is that my knee is now going to be able to go further ahead of my toes. So you'll see these are of different heights, and what that means is that when I stand on this versus standing on this, my ankle is no longer starting at 90 degrees. This ankle is in more plantar flexion, similar to me doing a calf raise at the start of the range. This one is in less plantar flexion. What that means is that if I squat on both of these at the same time, and I let the knees go as far forward as I can, this one is coming further forward than this one. What's the result of that? The result is that if I did both on something of this height, I'm going to be able to stay far more upright than if I do that, and certainly than if I'm on the flat floor. You can see that the starting angle is greater than 90 degrees compared to flat foot 90-degree angle. The result then, knees further forward, and importantly, the most important thing really, is that we get more knee flexion, okay? What are we talking about here? The knee goes forward, but the knee doesn't just go forward on its own. As the knee goes forward, this angle closes. As this angle at the knee closes, I'm getting a deeper stretch in the quads. I'm more upright, and more of the weight that I'm dealing with is distributed to the knee muscles. This doesn't just apply to basic squat variations. It applies to lunge variations. We can get the exact same effect. It also applies to leg presses, to hack squats, to goblet squats, or any lower body exercise that you do. You can use these implements, wedges in this case, or you could use something like a squat shoe. A squat shoe or weightlifting shoe has the exact same effect as using a wedge like this.